Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into another episode of the Cover One Air Raid Hour pregame show. Today, we will be breaking down what we expect to see from the Bills tonight versus the Los Angeles Chargers, plus previewing key matchups and handing out our pregame superlatives. But first,
welcome to the Air Raid Hour, a Cover One Network podcast. Here are your hosts, Judge Mathis and Tilt Money.
welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the Air Raid Hour Buffalo Bills pre-game show presented by the Cover One Sports Network and Picasso's Pizza. Dave, unlike the NFL streaming this game tonight, Bills Chargers, exclusively on Peacock, we are not exclusive. We are very much what's the word I'm looking for? Polyamorous with our Facebook stream, our YouTube stream, our Twitch stream, and of course our stream on X as well. So thank you, no matter how you are watching. We appreciate you joining us here at the Cover One pregame show. And I want to start this pregame show off, Dave, with this conversation. The Bills' backs have been against the wall since the bye week. And they've had a big test the last 2 weeks against some of the league's best in the Chiefs and the Cowboys. And the Buffalo Bills have shown over the last 2 weeks just how dangerous this team can be. But this is a new kind of test this week, tonight against the Chargers, for a Buffalo Bills team that has played down to opponents this season. Jets, Pats, Broncos, almost lost to the Giants. This Chargers game is a different kind of test, not to play down to an opponent who just got crunched last week and is onto a new head coach.
Got crunched last week, onto a new head coach, has had a 10-day break. You start to look and pick apart little advantages the Chargers might have going into this game. The Bills have played down to their competition at times this year and in seasons past, and have had to sneak out some wins, and at times have not snuck out wins. And so I think if you're the Bills, you still have to play this game as if your backs are against the wall, and you have to assume that you need to win the rest of your games if you're the Bills. I think that's the message that probably needs to go. Obviously, it's one game at a time, and that's what they'll be speaking, publicly. But if you're the Bills, realistically, to really give yourself the best chance, you have to win these next two games in order to set up that possible showdown with Miami in Week 18. So this is a game where you should feel like your back is still against the wall. There's no pressure on the Chargers whatsoever. All the pressure is squarely on the Bills, and so you have to go out there and perform today.
I mean, you look at it, it is Sean McDermott versus Easton Stick making his second career start. Sean McDermott has had success in the past against young quarterbacks making, early career starts. So Sean McDermott, advantage there. He's got to take advantage of his ability to sort of manipulate and create chaos and confusion for young quarterbacks. The Chargers don't have Keenan Allen, right? On the other side of the ball, you have Joe Brady. And quite frankly, Joe Brady with Josh Allen. So let's throw that out there as well. Going up against Derek Ainsley, who's going to be calling plays in the NFL for the first time. He has called plays before at the college level at the University of Tennessee, but he is now taking over this defense as well. So if you look at this game, right, we might not do a post-game show tomorrow because we're definitely not going to be doing a Christmas show. But the next time we talk, there will be some serious rage if Sean McDermott can't outduel Easton Stick and Joe Brady can't outduel Derek Ainsley.
Yeah, I mean, everything here is lining up for the Bills, so now it's just a matter of execution, right? I think you have to go out on the field. You have to realize, and maybe the games earlier this year will be a good recall or learning experience for this team. Giants, Tampa Bay, Patriots come to mind, where clearly the opponent was inferior. Now, especially the Giants and New England, right? I mean, Tampa Bay is kind of like a weird team to assess right now, but the Giants and New England, bad teams, bad offenses, and you let those teams hang around. In one of those games, you lost. So this is a game, the conditions are going to be prime, right? You're inside
Mhm.
at SoFi. There's no weather issue. The
Yeah.
Chargers don't exactly have a home field advantage, and especially won't probably in today's game,
Mhm.
given the circumstances and where the team is headed. So if you're the Bills, like, this has to be a game where you come out, and I don't necessarily say you have to blow this team out like the Raiders did, because that's very unusual
Mhm.
for the NFL. But I think you need to put forth a pretty convincing game plan and convincing execution in this game. And it would be a little disappointing if the Chargers kept the Bills on the ropes
Yeah.
in this game.
Yeah, for sure. A clean, comfortable win, I think, is what a lot of Bills fans are expecting to and need from the Buffalo Bills this weekend. On to usually our first segment on this show, and that is the injuries and the weather. The weather's pretty easy today. The weather's not a factor at all. This game is in a dome. And Joe Marino posted this on Twitter the other day, and it shocked me when I saw it. But then I thought to myself, like, yeah, that makes sense. This is the Bills' only game in a dome this season.
Hmm.
Like, how
Only indoor
crazy.
game. Yep.
How crazy is that when it seemed like the Dallas Cowboys plays like 10 to 12 every year in the dome? Because I think they played both LA teams this year. Like, we literally have to play all of our games except for one outside. That's pretty crazy. But on to the injury report for the Buffalo Bills. You're likely going to see Alec Anderson and Jermaine Ifedi as your two offensive line inactives like they have been all season. Micah Hyde has already been ruled out. There is no possibility that Justin Shorter is going to play in this game or be activated because he has been ruled out as well. So from there are some possibilities. Jordan Phillips has been placed on IR, meaning the Buffalo Bills, unless they call someone up from the practice squad, only need to make one other player inactive. AJ Epinesa is likely that player
Yep.
because McDermott was kind of like wishy-washy on whether he would return this week. You're probably not going to see Daquan Jones unless there's an upset special as well. But the Buffalo Bills could make some moves this afternoon before this Chargers game. You could see Kyer Elam activated to the 53 and take someone's roster spot. Ty Johnson with that shoulder injury. You could see him be made inactive and Leonard Fournette called up from the practice squad. So there's a couple of different things that you could see from the Buffalo Bills this week.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that what you said is probably the most likely. It would be. I feel like we probably would have gotten some inclination if they were going to bring up a guy like Kyrie Lamar for this game, and maybe this is
Mhm.
a situation where um, you might not need a guy like Kyrie Lamar brought up for this game, given the injuries the Chargers have had, especially with Keenan Allen out. But the thing that will be really interesting to me is to see what happens with the Ty Johnson situation. People have been clamoring for, in the hunt playoff Lenny for several
Mhm.
weeks since he's really been signed, and for a while there, it was not really necessary because Ty Johnson, once Joe Brady took over the play calling, really kind of found
Mhm.
himself and carved himself out a nice little niche on this team as a spell to James Cook in the sort of that more traditional, um, you know, between the 20s type role, I would say, with Latavius Murray still kind of coming in on goal line. So now what happens if Ty Johnson misses this game? Could you see Leonard
Mhm.
Fournette being active for the first time this season? It might make sense for that to happen, given that this game hopefully will be a fairly comfortable game and they can get Leonard Fournette some real game reps to potentially use him down the stretch, right? And
Mhm.
so, and into the playoffs, hopefully. So that's going to be interesting. I would expect AJ Epinesa is going to be that inactive, though, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
So, um, a lot of possibilities, but I think at the end of it, we probably won't see a lot of movement today.
Yeah, and next man up approach too. The one movement we will see is we will see Puna Ford onto the active roster, most likely, unless there's a Daquan Jones size upset, which I really doubt. It'll be Puna Ford going into Jordan Phillips' spot at defensive tackle. We'll talk more about that when we get to defense later on the show, because now we talk about snap counts, like who's gonna get the most repetitions next to Ed Oliver. Is it going to be Tip Settle? Is it going to be Daquan Jones? Is it going to be Puna Ford or not Daquan Jones? Excuse me. Linval Joseph, Puna Ford. Like who is it going to be next to Ed Oliver? That'll be really interesting. The Chargers inactives. We don't need to worry about a Bosa brother. He has not been activated off of IR. So Joey Bosa, who's been out since week 10, will not be playing for the Chargers today. They will be without Keenan Allen, their best offensive weapon. He is out for the second consecutive week with a heel injury. They'll be without corner Drake Leonard, linebacker Tanner Muse. I shouldn't say without because both are doubtful, but that really in this day and age means they're not going to play. And that leaves 2 inactive spots left for the Chargers. It could be more if they call a guy up from the practice squad, and who knows, because they did cut Sebastian Joseph Day just randomly in the middle of the week this week, one of their starting defensive linemen. But they have 3 guys with questionable designations: Sang Bassi, who contributes to that secondary, Nick Williams, who's a starting D lineman, and Nick Vanette, who is one of their blocking tight ends. So 2 of those 3 could fill the inactive list. All 3 of those guys could end up being inactive. All 3 of those guys could end up playing. Who knows? But the Chargers are a little banged up, and their 2 best players, Joey Bosa and Keenan Allen, will not be playing in this game.
Yeah, I think Keenan Allen's the big one, right? I mean, he's
and Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert, sorry.
Yes, obviously that. But Keenan Allen, I mean, he's been he's missed the last 2 games, including this one. But prior to that, I mean, he's been one of the best wide receivers in the NFL this year. I mean, even with Easton Stick coming in that other game, still had somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 to 8 catches with Easton Stick at quarterback. And really, Keenan Allen has been their go-to receiver. Other guys, Mike Williams, obviously injured earlier in the season. Quentin Johnston still trying to figure out what his role is, I suppose, and is having some issues with drops. Josh Palmer has been in out of the lineup. Obviously, he's their deep threat, but like without Keenan Allen, that's a security blanket for a guy like Easton Stick. So I would expect that this is going to be the Austin Eckler show today for the Chargers, or at least try to be. But we'll get to that when we talk to the Bills defense a bit. But having Keenan Allen out, I was really paying close attention to that one leading up to this week and watching the practice reports, because all things equal, like him being out just really deflates the entire offense for the Chargers. And so again, another thing that just puts this game in the advantage for the Bills. So, missing your best playmaker on offense, obviously a huge loss for the Chargers.
All right. We're going to get into the matchups in a moment, but first, a quick word from the guys over at the Cover One Buffalo podcast about the best ways you can support us here at Cover One.
Many people ask us the best way to support us here at Cover One, and that is to sign up to become a Cover One Pass member. That contribution helps give us the access to all the data and information we use to create the content that you love.
And I think most importantly, brings you into our community of insiders. It's a great community based on Slack. I know a lot of people don't want to be on social media anymore or be in on those conversations. We bring all of it to you right in our great community of educated fans. And most importantly, you get access to our content creators.
Even better than that, everybody loves merch. You get awesome t-shirts, a cool decal, and a letter from the Cover One team signed directly to you.
All for $60. That gets you the entire season, next year's free agency and draft. $60. Click the link in the description. Cover One Insider. Become one today.
All right. Let's start off by talking about the Buffalo Bills offense versus the Los Angeles Chargers defense. And before we even get started talking about the Buffalo Bills offensive players, guys like Josh Allen, James Cook, Stefon Diggs, etc., I think we got to have a brief conversation here about the state of the Chargers defense, because their head coach, Brandon Staley, who was just fired, was also their defensive play caller. So the Buffalo Bills should expect, with 9 days to prepare for this, that there might be some subtle changes to this Chargers defense. Staley was the mastermind. He had uber specific things that he would scheme up on a week-to-week basis. Derek Ainsley, just coming into this job 9 days ago, having not been the defensive play caller, even though he was in the building as the defensive coordinator. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong to assume this, but I would assume that there's probably going to be a more basic game plan from the LA Chargers today, sort of more of a hat on a hat approach, a play fast type of approach, expecting a lot of energy that the Buffalo Bills are going to need to match, more so than a specific game plan to maybe like the Bills' weaknesses.
Yeah, I mean, and statistically, the Chargers defense, even with Brandon Staley, had not been very good this year. 29th in the NFL in yards per game allowed, 30th in the NFL in passing yards allowed, 28th in the league in points per game allowed. And from a DVOA standpoint, looking at the advanced analytics, they weren't very good either. 28th overall, 28th passing, 25th rushing. So I think the simplified approach for the Chargers defensively. They have some players, right? Defensively, they have Khalil Mack, they have Derwin James, they have some guys, Kenneth Murray, they have some guys that are capable, but as a unit collectively, they just haven't really been consistent and figured it out this year. So it'll be interesting to see if, like, with Giff Smith at the helm, simplifying maybe things a bit defensively for them, allowing them to play a little bit faster, helps them a little. But at the end of the day, like, they're still going to be undermanned. They're still going to be in a situation where they feel like uncomfortable, I would say. And so energy wise, that is something you just mentioned that I'm going to be very curious to see. Like, how much energy does this Chargers defense really come out with? Like, how much energy does a guy like Giff Smith inspire in a team? Like, I don't know, man. It just seems like this team playing it cautious with Keenan Allen, probably him not practicing, realizing the season's kind of going nowhere. How much energy are they really going to play with? I don't know. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, looking at some of their defensive tendencies, again, under Brandon Staley, so we don't really know what to expect in this game. And these are their defensive tendencies. I filtered it on SIS since week 10, because week 10, week 10 is when, since week 11, because week 10 is when Joey Bosa went out. So since week 11, this is the chart tendencies. They are 6th in the usage of too high shell, 63%. So they do not want quarterbacks to get over the top of them. 60% zone compared to 25% man. They are 7th in the NFL since the Joey Bosa injury in the usage of blitz, trying to generate a pass rush, maybe without a Bosa brother on the other side of Khalil Mack at 32%. This seems to me like a defense that's going to challenge you to get the ball out quick, and it's going to try to force you to throw the ball underneath.
Yeah, and I mean, for as unfortunate and as bad as the Chargers have been, they still have Khalil Mack, who has 15 sacks on the season. Defensively, they're in the top half as far as third down conversion rate allowed. They're 14th in the NFL. So if you start to kind of dive in a little bit deeper, there's some areas where the Chargers defense can get to you. And I know Khalil Mack had 6 sacks in that one game, but otherwise he's been pretty good. He doesn't have any sacks in the last 2 games, but prior to that, 3 games in a row with 2 sacks. You will have to pay attention to him. Maybe he'll be the respect you player. We'll see. But I do think that, as we know, Josh Allen historically has done very well against the blitz. And if the Chargers do want to do something like that, then you could see something like we saw, in the last couple weeks, like we did against the Eagles, like we did against the Chiefs, where the ball's getting out quickly. Dalton Kincaid's involved. We'll see. But again, this should not be something that the Bills go into this game being surprised at, right? They have all of this information. They know what the Chargers like to do. There shouldn't be a ton of surprises for the Bills offensively against the Chargers defense. And yes, I understand there's a new interim. This is his first game. They've had 10 days, but I would be shocked if you saw really a ton of different things being dialed up from the Chargers in a game where they're likely, as you trying to make things a little bit for them personnel wise.
Yeah, a couple of good points here. Carl T coming in saying, who will step up and set the tone at the very beginning of the game? Because that might be important for the Buffalo Bills, because the Chargers are going to be looking to set the tone after getting embarrassed last week, after having their coach fired. He brings up Reggie Gilliams and the play that he made on special teams. Will be another James Cook run, or, Deion Dawkins with a pancake. Who gets this team fired up? I think that's a really important point, because I think at the end of the day, you have to realize, despite the fact that the Bills have an advantage on paper, a lot of times emotions and energy and things like that can sway a game in a certain way. The Buffalo Bills offense finally started clicking under Joe Brady, and they asked Joe Brady, like, what was the biggest play of that game? And he was like, the Reggie Gilliam hit on the first play, because it set the tone for the whole game. I think Adam Shepard comes in with a really good comment. He says, with the way the Chargers sort of 2 deep shell and they blitz, 12 personnel with Knox helping on Khalil Mack, and guys like Dalton Kincaid and James Cook out of the backfield could eat up a zone. That's a really important point. And Whiskey comes in and says, this is the Stefon Diggs game. Shut everyone the hell up and just keep moving. They can't guard him. That's something else that we're going to talk about this morning, because what what cornerback do they have to match up on a guy like Stefon Diggs? So we'll have that conversation in a moment as well. Let's talk about Josh Allen for a little bit here, and let's look at the Chargers. I did a little digging, right? I wanted to look at the Chargers' recent history against the quarterbacks that they've played the last 4 or 5 weeks. Last week, they played Aiden O'Connell. Aiden O'Connell went 20 of 34 for 248 and 4 touchdowns. In that game last week, the wide receivers for the Las Vegas Raiders went 2 of 2 for 12 yards and a touchdown. 5 total passing touchdowns were surrendered in this last game. But of course, it is a week-to-week league. So I took a look at some of the quarterbacks that the Chargers defense has faced over the past month or so. Aiden O'Connell, Russell Wilson, Bailey Zappi, Lamar Jackson, Jordan Love. Lamar Jackson being the obvious exception here, not exactly a murderer's row of quarterbacks that this Chargers defense has faced, yet they've surrendered 222 passing yards a game, 2 touchdowns, and in that 5-game span, only picked off 1 pass. Josh Allen is a beast that they have not seen in quite a long time as a secondary. Sans Lamar. Those are some pretty good numbers considering the quarterbacks that I just listed there. And that's not even that's discounting the fact that Bailey Zappi brought that all down, like, because that was the game where they lost 6-0. So Josh Allen should be able to Josh Allen should be the cook in the kitchen this week for the Buffalo Bills offense.
Should be. You mentioned it. Chargers have lost 5 of their last 6. Their only win coming against the Patriots in that one. Their last 2 games, DVOA, -3, 53.9, -85.5 against the Raiders. The Chargers have only forced 2 turnovers in their last 6 games, and they're tied for the fewest amount of interceptions in the league with, third fewest interceptions in the league with only 7. So this should line up, as you mentioned, to be a very favorable game for Josh Allen. If you want to talk about the tone setter, in my mind, I love the comment about Stefon Diggs. I think Stefon Diggs is going to be the tone setter in this game. I don't think they have anyone that can cover him. I think matchup wise, this is going to be the best offense that the Chargers have faced in this, 5 of 6 losses that they've just had. It is an opportunity for Stefon Diggs and Josh Allen to get a little bit momentum going. And I do think if you get Stefon Diggs involved early in this game, that he can be a tone setter and really just take this game over from the start and have one of those signature sort of monster games that he's capable of having. So for me, you're right. This lines up with Josh Allen very favorably. The Chargers haven't been able to take the ball away at all in the last several weeks. And so, Josh Allen's been taking care of the ball much better in recent weeks. And again, gets back to, don't give the Chargers any cheap ones, but they've been really struggling to take the ball away. So should line up well for Josh Allen and go.
Yeah, I had that in my show notes as well. I said Diggs an alpha game. Like, they do not have a cornerback to match up against him. So if you're looking for Stefon Diggs to get right, if you're looking for Josh Allen and Stefon Diggs to regain that chemistry, this is the game where you're going to want to see it, especially heading next week into New England and then the week after in Miami. You're going to need these 2 guys on the same page. This is the week to get them onto the same page. But on top of all of that, this is the sort of the game where I would like to see everybody in the passing game eat a little bit, right? I would like to see us continue to hit the running backs out of the backfield, guys like James Cook, get him 3 or 4 catches in this game or 3 or 4 targets in this game. I would like to see Gabriel Davis and Khalil Shakir funneled some more targets, right? Let's start getting our wide receivers involved in the passing game again. We didn't see it last week. They don't really have the CB2s or the nickels really to line up, in my opinion, against guys like Davis or Shakir as well. Let's get Dalton Kincaid back right after he had those 2 early drops because of the rain. He switched his gloves and then never had an opportunity to redeem himself because he never got another target the rest of the game. Get Kincaid and get Knox more engaged in the passing game. This is the week to sort of, I think, work out the kinks in your passing game, spread the love, get Stefon Diggs re-involved. This should be the get-right game for the Buffalo Bills passing attack in terms of just getting all of their skill position players involved.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it right there, right? Working out some things. Now, obviously, you need to make sure you take care of business and think whatever's working, you do need to kind of lean into that. But wouldn't be a bad idea to try some things out, right? That you're potentially looking to kind of clean up over the last couple of weeks. Now, that obviously comes with maybe devil's advocate saying like, well, don't put too
Mhm.
much, don't really put too much out there of what you want to do, but we really got to go out and do it first, right? To prove you
Yeah.
can do it. And so I'm not saying you got to reveal a ton, but you do need to kind of get guys involved. And, Knox and Diggs, to me, I think Kincaid will be fine. I think Cook will be fine out of the backfield. I think getting Knox and Diggs kind of you know, more of a focal point. Not saying that takes away from Kincaid or anything, but like I think
Mhm.
it'll be important for the Bills to be able to rely on both Kincaid and Knox down the stretch, and then obviously Diggs to get a
Mhm.
little momentum heading into this last stretch of games. So I'm with you. Like good day to potentially spread it around. The Chargers are really weak pretty much across the board, DVOA wise, against all different receivers. They're actually worst against
Mhm.
running backs out of the backfield. That's where they're worst in DVOA. Defense against pass catchers 29th. So maybe Cook gets involved as well.
Yeah.
And the passing game continues to be involved. But 18th is the best ranking they have against opposing
Mhm.
wide receiver positions against wide receiver twos. They're 29th against wide receiver ones, 22nd against wide receiver threes, 21st against tight ends. So not good everywhere. The
Mhm.
Bills should be able to kind of pick and choose what they want to do and
Yep.
dictate to this team.
Cody comes in and says, "Hey, new to the channel, is Dalton Kincaid's shoulder still hurt?" Yes, it is. Last week, he was in a red non-contact jersey all week and then played. And then just again this week, he was in a red non-contact jersey all week. So maybe it affects his play a little bit. Maybe his snap count is a little bit decreased, but at the same time, he is playing. He is available through this injury. The last thing I want to touch on the offense is the running game.
Mm.
Last week, the Buffalo Bills just pile drive, right? The Dallas Cowboys just absolutely bullied them. Josh Allen only threw the ball 15 times. I loved what I saw because, and we had this conversation in the post-game show. I don't want to rehash it too much, but I liked seeing the fact that the Bills have that tool in their toolbox. If they ever felt like that's the game plan they need, they can go out and they can run that game plan. However, there was a loud number of people in my comments this week on social media when I posted the promo with that clip who were concerned. Like, this is who Sean McDermott is. This is who Sean McDermott wants to be. Josh Allen's only going to throw the ball 15 to 20 times a game the rest of the year. He's going to neuter our franchise quarterback. Like, there was a lot of people who, in my opinion, were just irrationally upset in the comment section after a Buffalo Bills W and in a way that they won that football game. Are you at all concerned that now the Buffalo Bills have run the ball successfully, like 1 week, like really successfully for 1 week, that they're going to go to the well too many times? Because I'm not, but
Not concerned at all. I mean, we talked about on the post game, like
Mhm.
the 15 attempts Josh Allen had was the lowest he's had in a true game that he's played in since his very first game in the NFL. So, look, eh, I'm not concerned at all. I think if you
Mhm.
are like thinking that, it is a bit irrational. I mean, at the end of the day, like you're like people are gonna you have one people who say like the Bills don't run the ball enough, and then you have another people say the Bills run the ball too much after this game. It doesn't make sense to me.
Mhm.
At the end of the day, you need to do what's working best against the opponent you're facing that week. In
Yeah.
that particular game, the Bills were running the ball over and over again because the Cowboys weren't adjusting and they weren't stopping it. If you
Mhm.
are a fan, you should be excited about that because that was the Bills sticking with something that was working, not overthinking things, as Joe Brady pointed out
Yeah.
in his press conference,
Mhm.
and saying, like, something's working. Why would we go away from it? Right?
Yeah.
Until they prove they can stop it. This is not going to be the norm. Josh Allen having 15 attempts a week is not the norm.
Mhm.
If it happens, that likely means the Bills are going to be in a repeat situation as they were last week, where they are just dominating a team on the ground. So when it calls for it, sure, I have
Mhm.
zero concern. In fact, I'm very happy about it because now it shows me that if the Bills
Yeah.
need to go to something like that against a team, they can if it dictates. So yeah, opposite of
Yeah.
concerned, I guess. Like
Yeah.
I'm not
I
concerned
would
at all.
I would fully expect, seeing the DVOA numbers and seeing the advanced analytic numbers and things like that, I would fully expect that Josh Allen throws the ball somewhere between 30 and 45 times in this football game. Like I unless the Buffalo Bills get up to like an early lead and he doesn't have to, like a real big early lead, and he just stops throwing because he just doesn't need to. Unless something like that happens, I would expect Josh Allen to be throwing the ball sometime between 30 and 45 times in this football game. it would still be nice to see James Cook get to the 15 carry mark this week, right? Like you still, I still want to see James Cook getting 20 touches a game in some way,
Yep.
shape, or form.
Yep.
15 carries, 5 targets, etc. Like try to get the ball in his hands 20 times a game, right? I think that's important. So don't overcorrect this week and pass too much. And I would really like to see the Buffalo Bills get out to a lead in this football game and allow some of these guys to rest up, ride Latavius Murray. If he ends up getting to 15 carries in this game because the Buffalo Bills are trying to close it out in the fourth quarter, that would pump me up. Same with if Leonard Fournette plays. If Leonard Fournette gets some carries this week, that would pump me up as well.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's going to depend on the game flow and how things are going, right? If James Cook ends up with 10 carries and a couple catches because the Bills just legitimately don't need him to do more than that, then that's fine, right? 10 to 15 carries, good number to kind of aspire to. Obviously, getting him involved out of the backfield, the matchup should be good for that as well. And James Cook has proven that he is a guy, if the Bills are up big in games, that you take him out with the rest of the starters, right? Like he's a guy that you preserve in this situation. So very interested to see, as we mentioned at the top of the show, what happens with Leonard Fournette today if Ty Johnson can't go. Wouldn't mind seeing a heavy dose of him and Murray in the second half of this game. Hopefully things go according to plan, and that's kind of what we can see.
All right, let's transition now to the Buffalo Bills defense versus the Los Angeles Chargers offense. And I want to start again with what to expect with no Brandon Staley, because I understand that Brandon Staley was a defensive-minded head coach and Kellen Moore was the person sort of in charge of the offense. So in reality, you would think, oh, not much is going to change. But I think you have to ask yourself, what was Brandon Staley's effect on this offense? Did he have any restrictor plates on Kellen Moore? Were there things philosophically he was asking Kellen Moore to do that Kellen Moore might not have been comfortable with or wouldn't do if he didn't have somebody like Brandon Staley talking in his ear? There was a point earlier this season where the Chargers offense was kind of sluggish and people were commenting like, this just looks like Kellen Moore running the offense that Brandon Staley wants to run. It doesn't look like Kellen Moore running a Kellen Moore offense. So it'll be really interesting to see what kind of changes you see from the Chargers offense this week, given that Kellen Moore's supervisor, right, Brandon Staley, is no longer at the helm.
It's funny, right? Like there's a little bit of a parallel to the Bills with McDermott and Dorsey here, right? With this Chargers situation with Staley and Kellen Moore, people thinking McDermott has too much influence on the offense. He wants it done a certain way. Is that affecting how Ken Dorsey's calling games? I think that's been debunked at this point with Joe Brady at the helm and sort of what he's been able to do. So but with Brandon Staley, we don't know, right? With Kellen Moore, what was he kind of dictating there? I think if you are the Chargers and you're Kellen Moore today and you're really trying to win this game, you need to now focus and get the ball in the hands of your now best player on offense, and that's Austin Eckler, who's been having a bit of a down season by his standards. Now I know he's gone through some injuries and the like, but I mean, this is a guy whose last 4 games rushing 32, 18, 51, 9, right? Like that's not Austin Eckler type numbers if you are really trying to get him involved and going. So now without Brandon Staley, is Giff Smith going to focus and Kellen Moore going to focus more on getting him involved? He's their best chance. The Chargers have a decent, they have a decent array of weapons beyond Keenan Allen with Johnston and Palmer and Everett, but like Eckler's the guy now, right? So how much will this offense kind of revert back to funneling through Austin Eckler, knowing that that's probably their best chance to win this game, limit the amount of possession the Bills have, funnel the offense through Austin Eckler? We will see, but this is the first game, right, without Brandon Staley, so will be interesting.
The Austin Eckler point is a good one, and I had that in my notes as well, because we also need to remember that Tom Telesco is gone now too, the general manager of this football team. And I made this comment to you last week, and I made it on the post game show when we started previewing the Chargers a little bit. It almost seems like the LA Chargers have accepted the fact that Austin Eckler will not be back in 2024, and they are just slowly phasing him out. Like he's become practically a third down back. Is that something that came down from the top? Like Tom Telesco's like, hey, I want to see Isaiah Spiller. I want to see Joshua Kelly because Austin Eckler is not a part of our future plans. Was Brandon Staley harping that on Kellen Moore, etc.? You have to ask yourself those questions. And now with those two gone, is Austin Eckler going to touch the ball 30 times in this game? Like, those are the things that maybe you can't plan for, or you can't predict with any level of consistency, just because these two guys who are up top are gone. Looking at some of the Chargers' tendencies this season under Kellen Moore, they have been top 10 all year in no huddle, in shotgun, in motion, in play action, and in RPO. It is important to note that they were top 10 in all those categories usage-wise, but they had Justin Herbert. They were also 9th in the use of screen passes and 11th in the NFL in running into light boxes. Very, very, very small sample size, but looking at how the Chargers sort of utilized different things in the offense with Easton Stick last week against the Raiders, they were still 3rd in the NFL with the use of motion. They motioned on 75% of their plays. They were still 6th in the NFL in the use of RPOs last week. They were 3rd in the NFL in use of screen passes. They ran 8 total screen passes last week, and they were 7th with a backup quarterback. This is to be expected. 7th running the ball into a light box. They carried the ball 13 times into light boxes. That's half of the time they saw a light box, 48%. So with Easton Stick, still expect the motion, expect some screen passes, and expect the running game when you don't crowd the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and I mean, just talked about Austin Eckler and sort of that element of him running. He still has 16 combined catches over his last 4 games. Now, we know he's like a reception monster, so maybe that's a little low for him. But 4 catches per game over the last 4 games, still a decent clip for him. This Chargers offense has turned the ball over 11 times in their last 4 games, so I'm assuming they're going to want to try to focus on ball security, screen game, a good way, as Charles says, and as you mentioned, to kind of maybe slow down that Bills pass rush against an offensive line of the Chargers who, outside of Rashawn Slater, hasn't been that great this year. They really haven't been that great. And so the screen game is something I would look at if I was the Chargers offense, trying to make things a little bit easier for Easton Stick, and another way to maybe get Austin Eckler involved. It's interesting, the point about Eckler, right? Because if these guys know he's not coming back and there's no real reason to not run him into the ground, right, in this game, and so to speak. So, yeah, the motion is going to be obviously key to kind of pay attention to. But to me, I think this comes down to protection, right, for Easton Stick and that Chargers line up front. And if they can get the screen game going and they can do a decent job on 3rd downs, then maybe that slows down the Bills pass rush a little bit. But it's still a lot to ask, right, from Easton Stick in this game. And so I know he's had now 10 days since his last start, but again, they're going to try to focus on ball security, would be my guess, given the amount of turnovers they've had in the last several weeks.
I mean, you look at when the Bills play young, inexperienced quarterbacks, Sean McDermott's been able to take advantage. Sam Howell was one of the hottest quarterbacks in the NFL the first 2 weeks, and Sean McDermott got him to turn the ball over, 4 or 5 times in that Commanders game. So Sean McDermott has that effect on young quarterbacks, and let's see if he can continue to have that effect on Easton Stick. Some matchups to watch out for. The Chargers have been missing their starting center, Corey Linsley, for most of the season. Last week, my favorite internet meme, Will Clapp, if you know, you know, their backup center, he went out. So now they're down to their 3rd string center in Cameron Tom. To me, this is the matchup that if you're Sean McDermott, you want to exploit. Number one, you have Ed Oliver versus a 3rd string center. You're going to want to exploit that. You have Gregory Rousseau, who we've seen move around a little bit this year. Maybe you put him at the 0 tech over top the center and see if Gregory Rousseau can get a little bit of a pass rush. And then last but not least, when you decide to blitz in this game, blitz up the middle, blitz the A-gap, Terrell Bernard, Tyrell Dotson, Jordan Poyer. Make Cameron Tom sort of just try to break that offensive line from the middle out in terms of how you attack with your pass rush.
I absolutely love the idea of pressure up the middle in this game. I think Terrell Bernard, well documented, talked about ever since he's been drafted, that was one of his best traits, right? His ability to blitz and rush the passer from that linebacker spot. Now, he's been playing well and he's been doing it all, but I would love to see him kind of make an effect on the passing game with his pass rush today. I think that's a really good opportunity. And Ed Oliver up the middle, I think if you want to talk about Stefon Diggs being the tone setter on offense, I feel like Ed Oliver will be the tone setter on defense today because that's a big matchup. Easton Stick, he is not the most mobile guy. I mean, he can move around a little bit, but like pressuring up the middle after the Bills just coming off games against Mahomes and Dak, two of the best at kind of escaping out of the pocket and maneuvering, avoiding pressure. This should be a prime matchup for the Bills from a pass rush standpoint. So I love the idea of getting pressure up the middle.
Well, and it's crazy too because you mentioned Easton Stick's not the most mobile of guys. He was in college, like at North Dakota State. He was almost practically a run first quarterback. So it'll be really interesting to see if maybe the Chargers try to lean into that more. They didn't try to lean into it last week at all.
They did not. They did not at all.
He had two designed rollouts the entire game. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe that's somewhere where they try to pivot is to try to get him maybe some rushes or maybe try to get him rolled out of the pocket, etc. But yeah, getting pressure on Easton Stick, forcing turnovers. That was the second thing I have in my matchup to watch. Rasul Douglas, noted route jumper versus a young, inexperienced quarterback that the Buffalo Bills should be able to get pressure on. I have my eyes on Rasul Douglas today. I expect him to get an interception in this game.
That would be nice. I mean, if you think about kind of how this parallels a little bit to last week's game with the Cowboys, you have your Joshua Palmer, who's kind of maybe your Brandon Cooks, right? That guy that you really have to watch out for deep. But can Quentin Johnston at all step up for this Chargers team, right? I mean, high draft pick. He's had issues with the drops. Probably going to see a bunch of Rasul Douglas matched up with Quentin Johnston. Is this a big advantage for the Bills? I say yes, right? I think this is a big advantage for the Bills. The inconsistency from Quentin Johnston this year has been apparent, and Rasul Douglas, I think, has a prime matchup there too as well. I'm not saying he'll be exclusively on Quentin Johnston with the Bills zone coverage and the like, but you would think he would be matched up against him at points, and is not exactly the guy that you have fear striking into you at the moment until he proves it, right? So to me, Rasul Douglas, I'm with you on that.
Quentin Johnston, just like historically low separation numbers for a first round pick. Like Tom Telesco, man, he passed on Zay Flowers, he passed on Jordan Addison, he passed on Dalton Kincaid, he passed on Sam Laporta. There were a number of guys who went like within 10, 15 picks of Quentin Johnston that look like and are on track to be a lot better than Quentin Johnston. I think Quentin Johnston might have been the nail in Tom Telesco's coffin. On to some other matchups. This is a very, very small sample size. One game, right? But the Chargers were 31st in the NFL last week in running into a heavy box, meaning that when the Oakland Raiders brought 7 guys into the box, the Los Angeles Chargers, they did not really attempt to run the ball. I wonder if one of the things that you'll see from Sean McDermott this week to try to throw off Easton Stick is for the Bills to fill the line of scrimmage, right? And bluff and force the Chargers sort of into throwing the ball more. They see the stack box, they go to throw it, but the Bills really bluff and they don't really send all the guys they have in the box. Sean McDermott has been noted for disguising who is blitzing, who's dropping back, etc. So maybe the Buffalo Bills try to crowd the offensive line this week. And I did say Oakland. Dang it. So good. So good. I haven't said San Diego yet, though. Maybe the Buffalo Bills try to crowd the line of scrimmage this week. Try to force the Chargers to throw the ball, which is what they're probably going to want to do, and utilize that to confuse Easton Stick and try to force some turnovers.
Yeah, that seems to make a lot of sense. I also don't hate the idea of them just legitimately crowding the box and maybe bringing some pressure off of that, as we mentioned, with Terrell Bernard, maybe up the middle, maybe some Jordan Poyer action as well. I think forcing Easton Stick to make quick decisions is going to be important for the Bills, right? I think, like, to me, last week was a different animal with Dak, right? You played a lot of coverage, and there were a couple coverage sacks last week. I wouldn't mind the Bills taking some shots today with some extra
Yeah.
pressure, forcing
And,
Easton Stick to make some quick decisions.
and you know what? Like, maybe they go the reverse too, because they trust their coverage so much against a subpar group of skill position players. I have next in my notes here, like, avoid Rashawn Slater when you can, attack Trey Pipkins, right?
Yep.
Their right tackle. Trey Pipkins this year, and he was hurt this week too. He ended up not getting an injury designation, but he was on the injury report this week. This year, Trey Pipkins has surrendered 9 sacks at right tackle in 14 games, 31 hurries, and he's allowed 48 pressures. If I'm the Buffalo Bills, this is another week where I am lining up Leonard Floyd at left end as opposed to right end, trying to get him on matchups with Trey Pipkins as opposed to matchups with Rashawn Slater. And maybe with a third string center, maybe with Leonard Floyd, maybe the Buffalo Bills can generate enough pressure with 4, drop everybody back. And that's the way that they just attack a guy like Easton Stick. So I think there are a number of ways in which the Buffalo Bills could approach this game. Maybe it's a mix of the two.
Yeah, and maybe that's, again, since we're discussing that, like
Mhm.
a big advantage for the Bills, right? Because they can mix and match. And this is an interesting point, I think, is
Yeah.
from AXN here. Am I wrong, or does it seem pretty evident from the start if our defense is playing fast and aggressive? And obviously that was the case last week against Dallas. We mentioned at the top of the show the energy level, right? Like, was not hard for the Bills to get up for that Dallas game, given the gravity of that game. The gravity of this game is still pretty important because the Bills really have to win this game. So what will the
Mhm.
energy level be like from the defense today? I feel like the defense is going to, they should be feeling really confident
Mhm.
and probably excited for this matchup, given everything we've already talked about. But can that energy level be there really for the better
Mhm.
part of the game, but more importantly at the beginning of the game, right? And I think that'll be something we talked about at the onset. We talked about with the Bills offense. Can the Bills defense bring that same energy level and aggressive style that we saw last week? Because it did feel different last game than it had
Mhm.
in games past.
All right. Next thing up on the docket that I have is a conversation about who lines up next to Ed Oliver. And I didn't have a chance. I wanted to go through and I wanted to dig up the snap count data and talk about who would take Jordan Phillips snap counts. And I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I can tell you generally Ed Oliver and Jordan Phillips had been getting the heavier end of the defensive tackle rotation since Daquan Jones went out. And Linval Joseph has been getting somewhere between like 17, 25 snaps a game. And then Tim Settle was usually coming in at number 4. So now you're losing the number 2 guy in your defensive tackle rotation, a guy who's been getting 50, 60% of the snap share each week in Jordan Phillips. So no Jordan Phillips, no Daquan Jones. Who fills that void? Does Tim Settle get significantly more snaps and Poona Ford gets the Tim Settle small percentage? Does Poona Ford and Tim Settle split it and they're both end up sort of just moderate? Does Linval Joseph, even at his advanced age, see an uptick in snaps? How do the Buffalo Bills go about replacing Jordan Phillips in terms of how they rotate their defensive tackles? That is going to be something to watch for in this football game.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine it's going to be kind of a drag and drop of Tim Settle if I was going to predict. I mean,
I would
122
agree.
run defense snaps from him. I don't think that you necessarily change Linval Joseph's role because of this injury to Jordan
Mhm.
Phillips. I don't see that changing all too much. So to me, it pretty much becomes a drag and drop of Tim Settle in place of what Jordan Phillips
Mhm.
was doing. So that's kind of how I see it. We'll see if it plays out that way, but I wouldn't necessarily expect Linval Joseph's snap count to all of a sudden increase dramatically. And I wouldn't really expect, um, you know, some surprise, monster snap
Mhm.
count from Poona Ford because they've been so clear about how they feel about him with him being inactive every
Yeah.
week. So I feel like it'll probably be Tim Settle.
Yeah, I agree. And that is what scares me the most, right? So this is where Tim Settle has to hey, guys have shown up this year that we weren't expecting to show up. Guys like Tyrell Dodson have made an impact. Cam Lewis has made an impact, right? So guess what? Tim Settle, now it is your turn
Yep.
to shock the world and make an impact for this Buffalo Bills defense. Looking at some players to watch for the Chargers, obviously Austin Eckler we talked about. Do they unleash him in this game? That's something to keep an eye out for. Joshua Palmer is a really good young receiver. He's their de facto number one with no Mike Williams, no Keenan Allen. He had a big game last week. A lot of his statistics came in garbage time, but he is working his way back from being on injured reserve. I really hope the Bills win, but Josh Palmer has somewhat of a big game because Greg Thompson is lucky. I got Jamar Chase on IR in our Dynasty League, and I got Nico Collins with a hamstring injury in Case Keenum. So I was forced to start Josh Palmer this week. So Greg Thompson, you're lucky that we're matched up in the second round of the playoffs, and I am starting Josh Palmer over Jamar Chase and Nico Collins. But hopefully maybe Josh Palmer has a solid day, but everyone else is invisible, right? And there's a huge possibility of that because you look, there's not a lot of threats on this offense. Gerald Everett, Dylan Parham, Quentin Johnston, Alex Erickson, Guyton, right? Not a lot of threats. The only other real threat that they have is Darius Davis, who's that sort of pint-sized return man speed threat. It'll be interesting to see if they get Darius Davis involved in this offense this week because not a lot of pop from those skill position guys.
Not a lot of pop. I would, respect Josh Palmer's ability to go deep. I think Jalen Guyton has at points in his career shown limited flashes of being able to be a deep threat as well. Gerald
Everett has shown volume capabilities before too. Gerald Everett's the kind of guy who could get 10 targets in this football game. He's capable of that, but it's so few and far between with him.
It's few and far between, and the Bills have done a really as far as top tight ends, the Bills have seen them this year, right? They've seen Kelsey, they've seen Ferguson, they've seen other tight ends, good tight ends this year. So, matching up a guy against Gerald Everett, I don't think is necessarily going to strike any fear into the Bills, but he's probably going to be a safety valve type of player for Easton Stick today. So, wouldn't be surprised to see him get a ton of targets.
Carl Tolman coming in saying, will they elevate Ilianku and give him some snaps? It'll be really interesting to see because, again, it's a Saturday game. So there is no deadline for practice squad call-ups. I think we're going to get them with the active and active list an hour and a half before the game. So it'll be a surprise leading up to game time what we see. Do we see Leonard Fournette? Do we see Kyrie Elam activated off of the injured reserve onto the active roster? One of these things could be Poona Ford got jumped, right? Ilianku's active, Poona Ford is inactive. That is within the realm of possibilities. I doubt it, but it's in the realm of possibilities, and that is definitely something that we'll definitely be tweeting about if it happens an hour and a half before. Before we get to our superlatives, you're in a dome, no excuse, Tyler Bass. You can't miss anything today. It's Tyler Bass versus Dicker the kicker. It is Sam Martin versus J.K. Scott. And if you Buffalo Bills are looking to give the Chargers any type of momentum, you can do so by kicking the ball to Darius Davis, punting the ball to Darius Davis and not getting back in coverage because Darius Davis is a very, very good young return man.
Yeah, and a lot of people are going to look at that game last week and see, obviously, he made the mistake on special teams and fumbled, but by and large, over the course of the entire season,
he also took one back for a tight. If it wasn't for a stupid block in the back or holding call, he would have had a touchdown too. Kid is a special return man.
And for once, it seems like the Chargers actually have got the special teams part of their roster correct. They're number 2 in DVOA in special teams. Darius Davis is one of only 6 guys in the league this year who has a kick return touchdown. And he is the highest average per punt return in the NFL. So a good special teams unit for the Chargers. And so, a small advantage for them. Yes, but a big play, toxic play.
I have
give him a chance.
And the thing too is I've been on our pre-draft coverage, just hammering home that the Buffalo Bills need to use a mid to late round pick on a return man. 2 years ago, I wanted Britton Covey. He's doing great in the Eagles. Last year, I talked up Darius Davis. Now, Darius Davis went sooner than I thought. He went in the 4th round this year, which I did not expect. But hey, note for this offseason with all the draft picks that we have, I'm going to be looking for that mid-round return specialist type of guy because I don't think Deontay Hardy is long for the Buffalo Bills. But hey, Deontay Hardy, surprise me. Make a play this week on special teams. He had a big punt return last week. All right. Before we get to our pregame superlatives, this show is brought to you by Picasso's Pizza. 4 great locations in Williamsville, West Seneca, Lancaster, and Blaisdell. Buffalo Pizza, since 1980. You can order online at picassospizza.net. And if you're an out-of-towner like us, you can even get it mailed to your home. And I can tell you from experience, it is just as good as getting it fresh from the restaurant. Again, that is picassospizza.net. All right, on to our pre-game superlatives. Let's start with our take me higher player of the game, as we always do. Who is one player on the Buffalo Bills, not named Josh Allen, who is going to have to step up their game, play at the elite level they are capable of for the Buffalo Bills to win this football game? Dave, I'll start with you, and then anyone in the comments section, your take me higher player of the game, share your player and reasoning, and we'll read off some of those as well.
It would be easy to go to Diggs, right? Because it would be nice for him to kind of have that alpha type of game, but I don't think necessarily they need him to for the Bills to win. I'm going to say Ed Oliver in this game. No Jordan Phillips next to him. That interior of the Chargers offensive line, as you mentioned, underman. They're on to their second, third string center. Pressure up the middle against a quarterback like Easton Stick, getting in his face, making him make quick decisions, and also kind of setting the tone a bit in the run game as well, where I figure the Chargers will try to attack early and often with Austin Eckler. So to me, tone setter, take me higher player in this game is going to be Ed Oliver for me. I think he's going to step up. The rest of the defense behind him is going to follow suit, and Ed Oliver is going to be the guy that really kind of makes this game for the Bills defense and takes the Chargers out of it, hopefully pretty early. So I'll go with Ed Oliver.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I had two names on my lists, and if you went with one, I was going to go with the other. One of them was Ed Oliver, and in my notes, I just had one simple line: matchup versus third string center. Like, that's all I needed. For Stefon Diggs, I'm going to keep it simple. I'm going to go with Stefon Diggs as my take me higher for the game. There's no alpha cornerback to follow him. I expect the Buffalo Bills to be able to pass the ball at will on this Los Angeles Chargers football team, and I expect Stefon Diggs to be the one who initiates all of that, and I expect him and Josh Allen to get back on track heading into the final 2 weeks of the season, and then hopefully the season. So I'm going to go with Stefon Diggs as my take me higher player of the game. Next up is the wild card player of the game. This is a player that unexpectedly comes out of nowhere, has a big game, and helps the Buffalo Bills to a victory. Dave, who is your wild card player of the game?
I'm going to pick a guy that maybe in the past would have been sort of on the border of being a take me higher type guy, but given he's coming back from IR, only had a game or two since then, not necessarily a top 2 or 3 option in the offense, I'm going to say Dawson Knox. Dawson Knox, obviously, last week the Bills didn't have to throw at all, right? The week before against the Eagles, he led non-running backs in receiving yards, against the Chiefs, excuse me. He led against the Chiefs, non-running backs in receiving yards for the team, 3 catches for 36. And I think he needs to be an important piece of this offense down the stretch. And I could see him having a good game today on limited targets, and really maybe finding the end zone as well. So Dawson Knox, to me, good matchup, wild card player for me. Everyone's talking about Kincaid. Let's not forget about Dawson Knox. I'll pick Dawson Knox as a wild card.
I'm going to go with a receiver as well. And Matt G came in the comment section from Ag. He said Khalil Shakir. I'm going to go with another receiver for the Buffalo Bills. And I'm going to go, Roy Collins comes in and says Shakir as well. I'm going to go with the ultimate boom or bust player. I'm going to go Gabriel Davis. Big game, Gabe, right? I'm going to go. It's not a big game, but we're going to get a big game from Gabe. I have Gabriel Davis over 100 yards and a touchdown in this one. I think that's just the way it works, right? Like, everyone's been harping on Gabe Davis because of his 0 targets and 0 catches. Like, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's just insane, the number of games this year, or the stretch of games he's had over like the last 6 weeks where he's gone catchless or targetless. It's nuts.
Or 4 of his last 6, 0 catches.
But yeah, 4 of his last 6. So, and then like the one where he did have catches, it was like for over 100 and a tutty. So, I'm gonna go with Gabriel Davis here. That's just the way things work in Buffalo, right? Like, after the Sabres got spanked by the Columbus Blue Jackets, allowing 9 goals, everyone was just ripping on the Sabres, asking to fire everybody, and they go out and they spank the Toronto Maple Leafs with 9-goal performance. So Gabriel Davis is going to channel his inner Buffalo Sabres today, and he's going to come out with 100+ yards and a touchdown. All right, now on to our respect you player of the game. This is one player from the Los Angeles, I haven't said San Diego yet, Chargers that the Buffalo Bills have to respect in order to win this football game. Dave, I'll start with you.
Bills did a great job against Micah Parsons last week. He was my respect you player. I'm going to go to that theme again this week and say Khalil Mack, 15 sacks on the season, obviously 6 in that one game, but sackless in the last 2. Prior to that, 3 straight games with 2 sacks. I expect the Bills to have a similar plan for Khalil Mack that they did for Micah Parsons last week. He is a guy that, again, can create a very toxic play for you, negative play for your offense. And the Chargers are going to be, I think, selling out to try to come up with one of those plays in this game defensively. So for me, that starts and ends with Khalil Mack. Obviously, we know the history with the Bills drafting Sammy Watkins and not Khalil Mack. So there's a lot that goes into it, but ultimately, Khalil Mack.
You don't need to remind us. You don't need to remind us.
Ultimately, Khalil Mack is my respect you player.
Yeah. See, that's tough. So I had Khalil Mack number 1 in case you went elsewhere, but I'm not surprised that you didn't go elsewhere because it's kind of a struggle, right? To figure out a respect you player of the game after Khalil Mack. Derwin James is not the player that he used to be back there at safety. You could go Derwin James. You think like, oh, maybe Eric Kendricks, maybe Ken Murray at Kenneth Murray at linebacker, but they're getting toasted by running backs this year. Are Joshua Palmer or Darius Davis like name enough to give the respect to? Probably not at this point in their careers. So yeah, it came down to Austin Eckler, who we've already talked about a ton at the top of the show. I think that the restrictor plate could be off of Austin Eckler and you could see him touch the ball 20 to 30 times in this football game. If that is the case, then yes, Austin Eckler is my respect you player of the game. But if he's going to be continued to be used as a third down scat back, I'm going to go with Rashawn Slater. Like, I think that's the one guy on the offensive line that you need to respect. I think that your best pass rushers need to be away from Rashawn Slater. They need to be on Trey Pipkin. So I'm going to go with Rashawn Slater as my respect you player of the game. The Buffalo Bills got to get their best pass rushers on the other side of the offensive line. All right, up next is our fire sale. This is our hottest take of the football game. Dave, what is your hottest take of this football game?
Yeah, hot take it today. I'm going to say Diggs 150 plus receiving yards in this game. I think that it's been simmering for a while. He's had a little bit of issues with drops, obviously, but the matchup is too good. And I think the Bills will want him to be front and center, get some positive momentum, positive vibes coming his way in a matchup where it should be pitch and catch for Josh and Diggs today. And I'd like to see maybe a little bit more downfield to Diggs as well. I mean, he's been at or around the line of scrimmage a ton, catching those wide receiver screens, but you know, he's capable when the right matchup to win down the field. So I like Diggs today, 150 plus receiving yards.
Roy Collins comes in, says Hardy finally gets a deep one. That would be nice. I've been looking for the Deontay Hardy of old. We really have not seen it this year. Charles G comes in, says Chargers under 200 yards of total offense. My hot take for this football game, I'm going to go Josh Allen, 5 total touchdowns. I think he accumulates 5 touchdowns in this football game, both passing and throwing. Who knows? You know, the Raiders wide receivers had some success throwing the ball against the Chargers last week. Maybe Josh Allen catches one. But hey, it's Christmas time, right? So I think that tomorrow morning, Christmas Eve, or 2 days from now, Christmas morning, whenever you're around family, they always put the TV on. They always just put it on a generic channel as some background noise, right? While everyone's getting breakfast and talking and chatting and catching up. My family, it always ends up being ESPN. I always end up with like the first take on the TV screen. People are like, man, you watch too much ESPN. I'm like, no, I really don't. I really just see it like in waiting rooms and like whenever I'm visiting family. And I'll sound off when I see it. So I'm expecting that Josh Allen vaults himself back into the MVP conversation. And that's like the positive part about seeing first take on your television screens or FS1 on your television screens on Christmas or Christmas Eve morning. If the family's playing I think they'll be talking positively about Josh Allen. And I think they'll be talking about how he's back in the MVP race, because if Josh Allen leads the league in total touchdowns, right, and he does it by a decently large margin, and the Buffalo Bills win out and they win the AFC East and they're a top 4 seed in the AFC, he's got a legitimate case for MVP. I don't know why I guess I get now why he's not talked about, because the Bills are like the 9th seed in the AFC. But the second the Bills re-enter the playoff picture on the graphics, Josh Allen's gonna be right back in that MVP conversation. So that'll be really, really interesting. So that's my hot take of the game. Another good one would have been like Roy Collins says, scared Easton Stick, right? And I think another good one that we might have missed was a Buffalo Bill turnover heavy game, right? In terms of forcing a lot of turnovers. That might be a hot take for this game as well. All right, time to go back to the future with our game predictions. Dave, I'll start with you. Paint a picture for us. How is this game going to play out?
Yeah, and getting back to just quickly what Roy said, a defensive touchdown would be nice for the Bills too. We haven't had one
Russell
of those.
Douglas pick 6, baby.
Yeah. Look, I think last week I said the Bills would lose the toss. They'd come out and they'd score on the opening drive of the game against the Dallas Cowboys, and that happened. And they kept the Cowboys at bay as more than kept the Cowboys at bay for that game. So I think this week the Bills will get off to another hot start on offense. I don't know if they'll get the ball first or not. I think this is a game where if the Bills do win the toss, they probably will go ahead and defer it to Easton Stick and just make sure they get that extra possession. That just seems like something that McDermott would do in a game like this. But I think the offense will be in control today. I like Diggs to have a big game, as I predicted in the hot take. I think the defense will get a lot of pressure up the middle, starting with Ed Oliver. Might take me higher player. I think Terrell Bernard will play a key role in that as well, maybe getting some pressure on Easton Stick. I do agree with Sterling in the comments that Kellen Moore is going to empty the bag, trick plays, etc. Maybe one of those hits, maybe one of them doesn't. I don't know. The Chargers might get a cheap touchdown at some point in this game, but I do think the Bills will be in control throughout and ultimately win this. Coasting, I'll say, into the latter stages of the fourth quarter. So I'll say Bills 31, Chargers 13.
Yeah, a couple of hot takes that I missed. ELMI comes in and says Gabe Davis under 0.5 reception. He's locking that one in. Matt G says James Cook has over 100 yards rushing again, over 150 yards receiving. Sterling Archer did come in and make that comment about Kellen Moore, which I think is a great comment, right? Like, if we're sitting here mopey and depressed tomorrow because the Buffalo Bills lost, it's probably because the Los Angeles Chargers found a way to utilize trick plays, etc., on offense to accumulate enough points to somehow win this football game. My prediction for this game is that the Buffalo Bills win it 38-17. I think it'll be close early. What's it called? A dead cat bump? Is that what it's called?
Dead cat bounce. It's like a stock. It's like a stock
bounce.
term. Like when a stock's going down, it gets like one last bounce before it like goes to zero. Yeah.
They get a dead cat bounce in the first quarter, but I think the Buffalo Bills pull away over the course of the first half. I hate saying these because every time I make these predictions and I sound cocky and arrogant, the Bills end up embarrassing themselves. So let's hope that doesn't happen. I do think the Chargers add some garbage points late, but I have Buffalo 38, Chargers 17. We got Roy Collins coming in saying 34-6. Carl T coming in saying Chargers get a bump and keep the Bills under 40 points. 4 touchdowns in the air, 1 on the ground. Bills win 35-3. We got our boy Mitch back with Fanatics. We always loved interacting with Mitch when he was with us there. He says, "What's up, guys? Can this be a Gabe Davis game? Mike Davis been trash. Gabe Davis has been trash all year, but this could be a good matchup for Michael Davis has been trash all year. The corner. This could be a good matchup for Gabe. Yeah, I agree. He was my wild card player of the game. I think he's going to get 100+ yards in the tutty today. Like I think both Gabe Davis and Stefon Diggs go over 100 yards today. Like I think that's going to happen. And I think Josh Allen's going to have a big day in the air today because I think everyone's like, oh, the Bills are a running team now. The Bills are going to show that they're also, when they need to be a passing team, they're a passing team. When they need to be a running team, they're a running team. I think they're going to show that they have multiple tools in their toolbox this week. So should be interesting. One final prediction. Matt G comes in 35-17, ended game points by Chargers with the backups. For the Chargers, I think it'd be the third string at this point too, right? But they cut Sebastian Joseph Day. I don't know what to expect from the Chargers. Could we see some depth chart changes, right? Could we see some younger players getting an opportunity? Like we talked about how like Austin Eckler could pop off this week. What if Austin Eckler doesn't play at all and they just ride Josh Kelly and Isaiah Spiller, right? Like
that's just better for the Bills. I mean, honestly.
You just don't know what to expect when you're playing a team with an interim head coach that had 9 days to prepare and are looking for something to spark. And there a number who Will Grier could start this football game. Like who knows what the Buffalo Bills could be expecting from this. All right, thank you guys so much. We're definitely not doing a show on Monday. I don't know. We didn't have a chance to talk about this pregame. We're gonna do a breakfast with the air raid hour tomorrow morning.
TBD for me. We'll see.
TBD for you. I
yeah.
think I'll be live for at least an hour tomorrow morning.
All right.
If we get permission from the bosses, because we still haven't even asked the bosses permission for that yet. But likely seeing at least one of us tomorrow morning, maybe both of us tomorrow morning for a little bit of a Christmas Eve post-game show, because obviously Monday night is Christmas, so we will not be live on Monday. So expect that. And then we'll be back next week for our New England Patriots pregame show. Don't forget, Cover One post-game show is live following the game this evening. And obviously David Fox will also have his post-game report on cover1.football immediately following this game as well. Prepare yourselves, guys. We got Steelers Bengals in the afternoon window on NBC. Out of town fans, make sure you're subscribed to Peacock for this game. It's a Peacock exclusive. If you know any elderly Bills fans who are maybe not technologically savvy, give them a call, walk them through the process, how to set up Peacock. If you're obviously local in Buffalo, you don't need to worry about it. The game will be airing live on NBC, WGRZ, but should be interesting. Dave, did you see this no commercial fourth quarter?
Fourth quarter, yeah, that's nice.
There's gonna be some giant like Ford or Volkswagen like banner at the top of the the whole entire fourth quarter. They're gonna get their money somehow, but that should be pretty interesting. And I didn't know this. There's gonna be an exclusive playoff game, wildcard playoff game on Peacock only this year. That's gonna go over real well.
Yeah, and also, by the way, I'm hoping this fourth quarter where there's no commercials, it's a lot of Josh Allen in his cap on the sideline, just going giving a lot of high fives.
My biggest worry right now is like the Peacock's not going to be able to, like the servers are not going to be able to handle the number of people who try to log in this game and to like crash on me. But yeah, it should be interesting. I'll have to have my dad FaceTime me with his phone up on the television screen if that happens. That's what he was doing for the Chiefs game when we had that debacle of the Titans Browns going late. But it should be interesting. All right, thank you guys so much. Appreciate your time. Until next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Thank you for watching tonight's episode of the Air Raid Hour. Make sure to hit that like button on the way out. If you are catching the show on demand, leave a reply in the comment section and we will respond over the course of the week. You can always listen to every episode next day on all major podcasting platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify, by searching Air Raid Buffalo. Thank you for your continued support, and as always, go Bills!